What's going on, YouTube? Thanks for tuning in to another video. In the last one, you guys saw us do the modification from the viscous coupler onto the drivetrain of the CRX. So we used the viscous coupler from the Land Rover. We were able to use the ends off of an Element, a drive shaft, and make them work into our all-wheel drive converted Honda. If you are familiar with the build, then you know exactly why we did that. We are running a OEM style CRV/Element rear end at the moment, but we added that viscous coupler. That way we can pin the diff that's currently in the car. Now, before we actually do that, I kind of want to explain real quick what exactly pinning the diff does on these vehicles, because some people who go all-wheel drive use the wagon rear diff along with the wagon viscous coupler. I had a couple people in the last video ask me what exactly the viscous coupler did, and there is like a whole basically forum right up online that explains step by step what the viscous coupler does. Essentially, from what I've learned over the last year of studying the all-wheel drive stuff, it basically takes away the shock from the initial hit when you launch and whatnot. Some people are testing it without a viscous coupler, seeing if they can just do it 100% like a wagon differential, no viscous coupler, and have all the shock and then control it by pedal. It's working for some people. Some other people swear by using the viscous coupler, which is why we wanted to make the Land Rover work. But before we actually put that to the test, we have to do something called pinning the diff, which if you don't have a wagon differential, you have a CRV or Element, it's clutch engaged. So we have the differential inside of the car right now, and I also have a spare differential outside taken apart just to show you guys pretty much what we're going to be doing before we actually do it. So this is essentially our rear diff, and the Element and CRV differentials are slightly different depending what year, but essentially they all come in the same style of like mechanism and whatnot. Here we have the dual pump. So this basically throws fluid as you spin onto the clutch pack and to the rear gears, if I'm not mistaken, as well. And then right here, we have what we're going to be pinning once we take apart the one that's in the car, which if you look in here, it's essentially a whole bunch of small clutches into a clutch pack. And that basically has friction material. Obviously, it's a clutch. And as they spin, they start to grab and the rear diff engages. The wagon differential is always engaged. This one engages as the clutches start moving. The problem with this one is that after some time, the clutches start to wear out. If you guys used to see the videos of when I first got this thing running, the launches were insane. The clutches were working great, and you could hear like a big, excuse my noise making, but it would be like, brrr, basically the clutch packs engaging. You could hear it. Then with time, the clutch packs get like worn and they don't engage as much and whatnot. So essentially what we're going to be doing today, not on this one, this is just our demonstration diff. We're going to take out the clutch pack from this car, and let's pretend for a second that this is the one that we're taking out. We are going to drill holes in the top, run pins, and essentially that pin, we'll put a couple in it, will go through all of the clutches, and the top will be solid with the bottom. So instead of being clutch activated, it will always be one solid unit. So the diff will always be engaged, and the viscous coupler that we already installed will take away the shock from when we launch and shift hard, and it'll be a full-time all-wheel drive just like the wagon and how all the fast guys are running. So without further ado, I am gonna get the car jacked up right now, at least in the rear for the time being. I'm not gonna remove the differential from the car. I wanna show you guys how to do it with everything still in the car. So if you really wanted to do this as if you already have the car running that's all-wheel drive with a CRV or Element diff, you can just take the rear shaft off and do it from under the car without having to take the axles out or anything like that. Before anything, I just want to let you know, we are going to be using a 34mm socket to take off the main nut that holds the front cover of the differential on. This nut right here threads on right there, and it sits right there at the front of the the front of the diff. I took this one off with a 36mm. It's a 34mm, but if you don't have access to a 34, you can squeeze on a Honda 36, normally what we use for K-Series. So yeah, just letting you know that's you can use that as an alternative, but it is a 34mm nut. But like I said, we're gonna start lifting the car right now, and I'll show you underneath. All right, so we have the car on jack stands, obviously, nice and safe. Down here, you can see the rear differential. Like I said, this is the Element/CRV style with the clutch pads in the front. Connected to the shaft are just M8 bolts from the factory. They're 12.10 millimeters, but we also have some, not only those, but we also have 2 regular 12 heads, 6 point. So we're just gonna take that off real quick. Before I start doing all this, I want you to see on the sides, we're taking off this front cover all the way. So you see right there, I'm pointing at a bolt. That's an 8 millimeter head. So not only are we taking this front shaft off, or the back shaft, excuse me, then we're taking the nut, the 34 millimeter that I showed you guys earlier, and then the 8 millimeters all off. But before we do that, on the bottom plug right there, we're gonna be draining out the fluid. Like I said, this is staying on the car. We're not gonna do anything extra work. But yeah, we'll start draining the fluid and then taking those bolts off. The fill and the drain are just 3/8 regular stuff. It's like the drain on the transmission. So that just unthreads really easily. Let's see if I can do it without spilling any oil. There we go. Now the fluid that's coming out of this is the specific fluid that Honda sells. They sell, it's one that's formulated to work well with the clutch packs. As for the wagon differential, they run 80-90 fluid, which is a really thick fluid. Since we're not going to be utilizing the clutches anymore, they'll be pinned. I think I'm going to swap out this fluid for the 80-90 and I'll give it a try. If it doesn't work out, no problem. This is an R&D channel. We're trying things out. We want to give the community something to learn from as we learn on the way as well. So yeah, we're going to try the 80-90 fluid in this after we pin these clutch packs. So while that drains out, I'll take the shaft off as well as the 8 millimeter bolts that I told you. And then I'll show you from that point forward. Bolts around the casing off. Just wanted to show you something real quick. Here's one of the top bolts. You can see that it's all chewed up right there. That was my mistake because I put the socket on wrong and there was rust buildup. Instead of wiggling around and actually getting it loose first, I just went for it. It's a good thing to always have these little, I think they're called easy outs if I'm not mistaken. They basically cut into the top of the socket or into the top of the bolt, and you knock it on with a hammer, then loosen it with a ratchet, and then hit it with the impact. Got it right out. Took an extra 2 minutes, but could have been a lot worse had I not had those. So yeah, now that case is done, or the bolts around the case are done, just gotta take the main bolt out of the front, the main nut, excuse me, and be ready for all that fluid to come out. All right, I really hope that the phone stays up. I'm not on my camera right now. I'm using my phone to record today. Just a lot easier for what I'm doing right now because it's low lighting. And I just have it like wedged up against the light that I'm using. All right, so get that out of the way. Big nut right here. Zap that right off. Obviously that big 34 millimeter nut. Set that right under as well. Take the nut off. Then you have a flat metal washer. Behind the washer, you have a white nylon stay for the rubber O-ring we're about to take out, which is actually wedged right under there. See if I can wiggle this flange off. Let's see if it comes loose now. There we go. Comes right off. So you have the front nut that holds it, as well as the bolts around the casing and RTV, which when we put this back together, we'll obviously use a fresh seal of Honda Bond or gray Permatex. Both are excellent products. So I'm just gonna pull this out. And just right by the looks of it, it looks like it's pulling the clutch packs out as well, instead of staying them into the spot, but it's okay. Let's put this right there. Here we have the dual pump, and in here, the clutches themselves. This is gonna stay like this for the time being. It'll let everything drain, but I'm gonna take the case as well as the clutch packs out and show you a little more in depth out from under the car. All right, so here we have the outer case. As you can see, it has the bearing on the front of it, so the clutch packs can spin freely. Right here we have the whole clutch pack assembly. I'm going to flip this over with my hand holding the clutch packs. That way they don't come out of the case themselves We want to keep this as original as we can. Like I said, I'm sorry I don't have my tripod. I'm using my phone, not my camera today. All right, there we go. Let me see if... through. All right. The flange came off right there. We have a little O-ring right there. If you can have an access to a new one, you can get it at a Honda. If not, make sure it's not torn or anything. Inside of the case, this is a good thing to keep in mind. You have this one washer. This washer rides face up on the top of the clutch packs. It basically shims the necessary amount to keep it away from the bearing. And a little bit of the disc came out. We're just gonna maneuver that back into place. And then this is a solid clutch pack again. Nice and easy. We're gonna take this washer off. Make sure to keep this with the case. Setting it right back in there. You don't wanna lose that. And this is your clutch pack that you remove. Really simple. The whole process took under 10 minutes. Aside from removing the shaft, that took about 5 more minutes. So in about 15 minutes, we took this all out. All right, so I'm gonna start drilling out holes basically right here through all the clutch packs, the case, and the back half of it. This is just, I think, a 5/16 bit. It's just big enough for these pins to go through. So yeah, I'll start drilling out the holes. I'm gonna do the top one first and then see if the pin goes in nice and well, and then I'll do symmetrical, just to have 4 equal holes. All right, so far I was able to drill 2 holes through the clutch packs. It's taken me about 30 minutes, to be honest, just to do those 2. I had to run out and grab a better drill bit. Excuse the mess, please don't look at that. Anyways, I have a M6 10mm bolt, just ran through with a nut on each side. What I figured the first time after drilling the first hole, I noticed that it is super easy for the clutch disc to move inside as I'm doing that. So doing 1 bolt and a nut to do the second hole helped a lot, and I'm sure that now I have it, since I have it bolted on opposite ends right now, that'll make it super easy to make, or a lot easier at least, to make the 3rd and 4th hole. But yeah, as soon as I have the other 2 done, I can actually start welding in the pins. I already tested them out. They fit perfectly. It's looking really good. But I still don't have the welder. I have to go pick it up in just a few minutes at 3 o'clock when my buddy gets off work. Shout out to John for letting Pedro borrow his welder, and I'm about to borrow it from Pedro right now through John, so thank you very much. But yeah, so we're about to finish drilling out the other holes and go from there. Just wanted to give you a quick little update as I'm doing that. And it's looking good. Right now I have it in the vise just so I could put the bolt and nut on it, but I had been drilling it here on a piece of 2x6, I think that is. It doesn't matter, just some wood underneath, and holding it in place, because drilling it sideways is a lot harder than drilling it straight up and down. If I would have had the drill press from Burton's shop right now, it would be super easy. But yeah, whatever. We're still moving along and doing well right now. All right, so skip forward. I ended up testing the first pin and welding it into place. Keep in mind, this is a 110 welder. It's not a 220, and it's non-gas, so it does have a little bit of splatter and whatnot. The one that I was using the other day was a 220 and with gas and whatnot, so it was a really good welder. This is just kind of your budget welder, so there is a lot of splatter. You can see I welded part of the case shut right there. This is the bottom of the pin. I didn't do really good, but it is in place. That's the top, and then I'm going to shave that down with just a die grinder, make it nice and clean. But yeah, that's the first one in place. I'm just going to finish up welding around the case right now. I just realized that's a lot easier to do it like that, and then run the pins through so you don't have the backs popping out and whatnot. Everything stays in place. So I'm going to take this bowl off right there, weld on the other pin, and then I'll weld around the case and have it solidly shut closed. Second pin is in place. It comes through a little higher, but like I said, once this is welded on, we'll cut it off, the excess that is sitting pretty flush with the top. So yeah, I'll just weld this up real quick. Like I said, I don't have my tripod, but I'll try to set the camera down and show me welding it. But yeah, let me try that off real quick. This is the first one. The welder was getting a little hot right there, well, as I was holding it, and I haven't finished welding all around the sides, but I've just caked on that stuff right there so it can actually penetrate. This, I'm gonna have to go over it a little bit, but yeah, just gotta do 2 more pins. Although I think with the 2 pins, it should be enough. We're just keeping the clutches intact, like in one place. I don't think it's gonna be anything crazy, but we're gonna add the other ones just in case. I'll just finish up closing the case right now, and then we'll move over to the other sides. Cleaned it up a little bit. Both sides seem like they penetrated pretty decent. On the bottom side as well. This I could touch over with a little more heat, but the case is also all welded up. So now I just gotta finish drilling the 2 holes for the other pins and then weld those up, and that'll be done for the clutch pack pinning. So we're almost there, halfway. So we're gonna rock with just the 3 pins, about 3/4 of the way into the drilling on the last area. The drill bit broke and my drill's acting up, so it's not all the way through to the bottom. But the thing is that clutch packs on these, they go to about like right here, and it's through that last point. So it's got all the clutches engaged. It's even way past where the beginning of the inner splines are that we need to lock. So it's still acting as a locker right there. So I think with a 3, it should be okay. Other people in the past have done 4 and have no issues. I'm gonna try the 3. If it has an issue, then it's on me, 100%. I'm just gonna do a side-by-side comparison real quick. Just want to show you a stock clutch pack again. This is the one that I had for demonstration purposes, like I said. And there's the difference in them. Now these are different years. They are the same style if I'm not mistaken, but a couple of clutch discs are out of alignment right now, but there you go. That's the difference between an OEM and a pin. The case is completely welded shut all around. Obviously some imperfections on the corners. Not my favorite welder, but it worked. And 3 pins through it, 2 of which are all the way through. So I think that's gonna be more than enough for what we need. For the next portion, we're gonna take off the dual pump system, which some people have left them on when they pin them, other people have taken them off. It's just this whole assembly, but essentially what you're doing, it's 3 8mm bolts. They'll be the gold ones, which are inside. One will be in that location, another one will be on this side right there, and a third on the top right there. As soon as you remove those, the whole pump assembly removes itself. I've already loosened this bolt up here, as well as this bolt right here. I also took care of this bolt right there. It's cracked loose. Those are all 8mm. So as I was saying, this whole unit we are gonna remove. I'm gonna keep it just in case we have some issues down the line and we end up wanting to put it back in. But like I said, people have removed this before and have had no issues. As for getting fluid everywhere, I want to show you something. I've been thinking about this actually, because people are like, oh, how are you going to have fluid pump everywhere? You got to think the level for the fluid always sits right here. So you're going to have fluid at least right there, which is more than enough to go to the rear. And then at least right here, which will be more than enough to go to the front bearing right here, which is going to require fluid. So that should pretty much take care of the fluid issue. And yeah, let me just take off the rest of these bolts. I'm gonna set down the camera so you can see, and I'll pull this out right there and go ahead and start putting the clutch pack back in. Really bright. I hope the picture is okay for you guys. All right, there's those 3 bolts. This whole assembly should come loose right there, just like I said, a whole bunch of fluid. It comes right out. All right, I'm gonna set that right there since it is wet. Something to note, I am going to be removing sort of like a washer or keeper. Okay, let's see. We have a dowel, just like a regular dowel, like a pin, that goes through this main shaft right there, which holds this washer with the teeth facing outwards. This is probably just to hold it in place. I'm taking this off just because it's a loose component on the differential, and we don't want to have that banging around for no reason. And the clutch pack is going to sit right here, not back here, so we don't need anything going back here. Obviously, this is solid with the rear end, so that's not going to spin. I'm going to set the clutch pack on here just for demonstration purposes, not for the final assembly, because we still obviously have to clean out this whole back end, as well as put fresh RTV on it before we put it back together. This has like a little screen in here to, I guess, filter out the oil. We can leave that in. And then we have the metallic, the magnet, which stops any metal from continuing being pumped around. So yeah, I'm gonna be right back with the clutch pack and show you what it looks like installed. There's literally nothing special about it. This just slips right over. It has splines on the inside as well as the splines on the outside. That just fits right into place, and it kind of free floats. You might think that that might put too much load on the back, but you got to think about it. When it's sitting on the pump, it also free floats because of gravity. It's not laying on top of it. And also you have your bearing that the front half rides on, and then you have the nut that connects to the flange, that connects to the rest of the drive shaft. So it's not really a lot of load onto the back. It's pretty good. You can take this right out again, reposition it. It's just like regular splines. It doesn't need anything special. So yeah, next thing to do is clean up this surface right here. You guys have seen me do it in other videos. Basically just cleaning up the surface for fresh RTV. We'll get some brake cleaner and clean the whole inside of this differential. That way there's no excess fluid that falls onto our RTV when we put it back in or anything. And we'll do the reverse step of how we took everything apart. Obviously, keeping in mind to have that rubber O-ring that we took out, that should still be on the flange. Then putting the plastic O-ring, then the flat washer, and then the 32 millimeter nut, which should be somewhere around there. I forget where I put it. But yeah, it should be pretty straightforward. Pinned and welded clutch pack right on there, seated flush, and then put the front half on. Now, ideally, I should be wearing gloves to make sure there's no contamination on the RTV, but I think it'll be fine. All right. Okay, we have that on there. RTV all around. Clutch pack fully seated. Washer over the top of it, just like when we took it off. I'm using a different front half case this time. This one was all cleaned up already and painted, so might as well put it on. Want to make sure the bearing goes over the front of the clutch pack perfectly. There we go. And sits well on the dowel of the back case. It needs to line up perfectly. There we go. Perfect. All right, let's start by putting the bolts in. They are the 8 millimeters that we took off. Now I already had another set from the spare differential. These are all cleaned off and whatnot. We still have the same O-ring right there in place. Actually, it just came off. Where'd it go? I set that right there. Then goes the plastic washer. There we go. That is in place. Flange, rubber O-ring, plastic washer, metal washer, nut. There is a Torx spec for this, but you know how it is. A couple of ugga-duggas. That works out perfect. Now we just need to put the front drive shaft or the rear drive shaft back onto the flange. I'm gonna let the RTV dry for a couple hours, and then we can fill it up with the gear fluid, which we bought. And that should be pretty much it for pinning the diff. We're gonna be using the 8090 fluid, just like we mentioned earlier. The top plug is off. I'm not sure exactly how many quarts it's going to take since it doesn't have the pump in there. But we have the pan underneath just in case stuff falls out. And obviously once it gets up to level, it will leak out of the side. So it's been already about an hour since we put the RTV on there. So although it's not totally cured, it is dry and it'll hold the fluid once it's in there. There's one full quart. All right, wow, it actually took just under 2 quarts. That's crazy. I thought it was gonna take a lot more. But I'll let a little bit of that leak out the side. Like I said, the level should be right up there with the front bearing as well as the stuff in the back. So I'll seal that up for us right now. There we go. For the extra fluid that may have fell under it. And yeah, she's filled up now, just under 2 quarts for the whole thing. And yeah, she should be good to go now. All right, and just like that, we are done pinning the rear diff of a CRV or Element differential, all the clutch packs. Now it is real-time all-wheel drive. Or is that what it's called? Or full-time, whatever you want to call it. It's basically like a wagon now. It has a viscous coupler, and it has a rear diff that is always engaged. But yeah, with that being said, it does pretty much wrap up the video for today. We wanted to do the separate Land Rover and separate differential videos. Since they both are pretty long, I just wanted to give you guys the information without throwing it all at you at the same time. The car is where we want it right now, drive shaft and rear differential. Next that we want to do for the drivetrain and stuff like that, we're waiting on Liberty to send back the first and second gear faceplated. After that, basically our transmission and drive shaft and everything is going to be exactly where we want it. So we're super happy on that aspect. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the comment section below. We got a lot of reviews over the Land Rover viscous coupler on how it was done. By no way are we fabricators. We're not professionals. We're kids who are just trying to do things to their car, find the mistakes that we do, and share our experience with the public. That way you guys can figure out what we did wrong or what we did right. In this case, we really hope that the diff is going to hold up. And if it doesn't, whatever. It's a car. It's not anything crazy. Like, it's not your house burning down. You know what I mean? But yeah, so without further ado, we want to just wrap up the video for today. The next video that I want to do is basically doing the first drive with the pin diff, as well as a few launches. I still have to go down to refill my nitrous bottle one of these days, and we can do some more nitrous pools. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the channel. If you aren't already subscribed, make sure to hit that subscribe and notification bell as well, so you can stay up to date with the whole build, not only the CRX, but in the future, the Integra again, and a whole bunch of other stuff that we like to do over here. Hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day and keep on having fun with whatever project you're working on now.